Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Festival of Dangerous Ideas and to this session called Publish and Be Jailed. Now, there's a lot of chatter that goes on backstage at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas among the writers and various individuals who've come here to participate in these events. And there's a lot of chatter about, well, whose idea is really dangerous? Who's got the most dangerous idea? Who's really going to cause trouble? Where are things really at stake? And I have to say that when I was reviewing for this session and thinking about what I might say about Ragip Zarakolu, who's sitting right next to me today, it occurred to me that he doesn't have so much a CV or a bio as he does a rap sheet. And he has this simply for being a publisher. Now, Ragip Zarakolu, let me just back up a little bit, is an editor, a writer, and a publisher, mostly a publisher, from Turkey. And for the past 40 years, Ragip, you've been getting yourself in trouble with the law, one way or another, starting back in the 70s, right after you leave university. There's never been a point really in your life, it seems to me, from reading your background, where you either aren't doing something that's going to get you in trouble or doing something else that's going to get you in trouble while you're on trial for another thing that you did. I mean, you've got trials and convictions and charges, lots of acquittals, but prison time as well throughout these 40 years, mostly all for things that you've published. What are you doing wrong? Tell us a little bit about
yes
what it's been like over the past 4 years.
Dangerous ideas, or we can change it, rebellious ideas, or disobedient ideas, or resistance ideas. My adventure was based on utmost self-respect. When I was at university, while I was a good student and I was doing my master work before graduate from the university. So I was focused on academics. And then I was arrested in 71. So I had to change the way because the university closed the doors to me. They prevent my researches. They prevent my comments, and they prevent to put alternative history against the official history.
Now, this is following a military coup, right?
Yes,
in
71.
71. Military coup in Turkey. So
yes.
you'd been so
totally 2 years I was in prison. 3 times I was arrested. First, I was arrested with the intellectuals, well-known intellectuals of Turkey. I was a young master student at that time. So it was an honor for me to be arrested with famous writers, Yaşar Kemal's wife,
right.
Or Çetin Özek, one of the greatest academics on law in Turkey, or the humanist philosopher Vedat Güngör. At the beginning, my mother was very sad, and she was asking herself, what did I wrong? Why he went to prison? And when she came to visit me, she was happy. I'm proud of, you are with good guys. And it looks like my arrest in 2011. It was a little, I don't find the word.
Similar? Was it?
It was
what happened
remind my traumas.
Right.
Because that time there was a military government in Turkey and military courts.
Right.
So it was partly normal.
Right.
And
It's what you expect from a military government, right?
Sure,
And
because they are abnormal.
Yeah.
But during my last arrest, there was a civilian government, and the justice, the police, wasn't military, but the civilians. But
In a democracy,
and democracy,
democratically
and
elected government.
Yeah, and they work with the same methods. They try to create a crime against intellectuals. That time they tried to create in 1971 because we were in connection with Amnesty International, and military prosecutor defined Amnesty International as a communist organization because it's written international, you know.
Amnesty Internationale, right?
Yeah, from Moscow. But at least we were released in 3 months. And at that time, military court, they decided there is nothing wrong. But in civilian period, it took my releasing because of huge international campaigns. Also, I am very grateful Australian PEN. I had many cars from Australian PEN also.
Oh, that's very good to hear.
Yeah.
PEN is the international writers' organization that has chapters all around the world that advocates, not unlike Amnesty International,
in prison.
advocates for writers in prison or writers who are
and
being censored.
Important work began during the Nazi period to say the German writers from Hitler. So it is a tradition.
Yeah. As I was telling you backstage, I'm Chip Raleigh, I'm the editor of The Drum at the ABC. But in my past, had done quite a lot of activist-type work with PEN, with International PEN. And I was telling Ragip, I feel like I know you. I've been to so many PEN congresses where your name has appeared in half a dozen resolutions every year. Free Ragip Zarakolu, drop these charges against Ragip Zarakolu. So it feels like I know you really well. And I have to say, it feels like a bit of a miracle that you're actually here in Sydney right now, given this 40 years of harassment, if we can put it that way. Under different regimes, under military regimes, under democracies,
different periods.
Before while the Cold War was going on in the 70s, and after the Cold War, during the fear about terrorism. I mean, it doesn't really seem to matter what stage. There's always a censorship regime at work.
Yes.
And you're getting caught up in that. So it feels like a bit of a miracle that we even have you here right now. And I want to ask you first and foremost, are you okay now? Is there a charge pending against you? You're obviously free to come here to Sydney. Are there any charges against you now? Is there any pending trial?
It looks like a Kafkaesque trial because I was kidnapped from in front of my house. With a wife.
When was this?
2011.
2011.
With unknown person because they were civilians and their outfit was like normal young people with blue jeans, and you cannot imagine they are civilians, and afraid our neighbors, and they tried to save me. They suppose it's a gang, and so they took me to the police, the anti-terror police team, and this was my second visit of anti-terror police. First, I visited in Ireland. In Belfast as a human rights observer to controlling arresting situation. So
you were visiting Belfast?
Belfast.
Yeah.
To see how they respect human rights, the conditions because I am a human rights organization executive, and I was invited by a British consul to check in London and Belfast. But this time, I was prisoner, not observer. It was interesting for me, so I could compare the conditions between
This isn't all an intellectual exercise, though. You were under arrest.
So I feel always a little outside. When I go in prison, I am observing, how is the conditions. So I try to make my mind more free.
Is that a coping mechanism, or is this just something that you can't help but do to
I think
analyze?
It's a kind of defense mechanism to save your moral higher.
Right.
Yes, so I'm here. It's not normal. They are abnormal. And the situation is abnormal. So this is also an experience. I'm lucky I have this experience also. And I will go on express my ideas in prison also. I will go on to write, read, and express. And when I was in prison, I sent a petition to the Turkish parliament for acceptance, acknowledgement of Armenian genocide. I sent from prison. I could not dare, might be outside. So I sent this because this is a responsibility also for the others and other issues. And this is, so we will go on.
So
because it is a kind of mission to struggle for freedom of expression. It is not only a luxury. It's an honor of a human being to feel free, to express, free to talk, free to use free words without anxiousness.
I want to talk to you about some of the specifics of the most recent charges, you know, what the issues are, but you've mentioned the Armenian genocide, and that was
this is, for example, very dangerous idea for Turkey.
Well, very dangerous for the Armenians in 1915, if I might say, and prior to and after that. But so let's talk about that issue for a moment, because you got in trouble earlier in 2004 to 2008. There were a couple of books that you had published.
Yes, again, we have problems
on this topic again. One of which I think you were charged under Article 301. I mean, we won't go through the detail of all the various legal instruments because there are quite a few of them. But let's just say let's just say that there are a number of them. But I want to talk a bit about that issue and the books that your publication of which got the attention, I guess, and brought the charges. One was a translation of a book by George Gergian, correct? Or I'm mispronouncing
George Gergian.
Gergian.
Yes, he's a British researcher.
Right. Tell us about this book. What is in this? What is this book? What is it? What kind of book is it? What story is it telling? And then tell us why the publication of it would cause you so much trouble.
When the prosecutor called me for interrogation, I astonished. I suppose it is an accident, because the book, the title was Armenian-Turkish Reconciliation. At the cover there was Armenian and Turkish flags together. And the
entwined,
book,
right?
Yes.
This idea of...
Yes, the intention of the writer to build up a kind of bridge between Turkey and Armenia, but without denial, sure.
Right.
But immediately the book was attacked. One of the columnists of the Turkish media. And then the prosecutor called me. But I suppose this is an accident, but I understand. Later, it was beginning of new wave with Article 301. Because lastly, in 1997, we win. We acquitted with the book published by the Yale University about international law and Armenian genocide. So it was a success for...
A different book you won a case with.
Yes, and so we opened door to freedom for research about the genocide.
Right.
But I didn't understand what is going on with a simple book, a naive book, and we win.
It's a memoir, right? It's a part memoir,
part memoir, part article,
recommendation about what we should do.
Yeah. Also, there was an important report, a supplement,
right,
of the International Justice Institution in New York, because there was that period, there was American forced Turkish, Armenian so-called dialogue meetings, because Mr. Bush wanted to be free pressure on him from Armenian community. So he wanted to say Armenian community look at Turks, and Armenians were talking each other. And but this institution sent a report, and they told, yes, International Genocide Convention signed in 1948. So legally you cannot do, because you cannot go back from the date a law published, the older crimes. But at that same report, yes, it is a genocide, but legally it is impossible to put in trial now. For example, you cannot accuse here also a trial about aborigines or Indian natives in the United States. You cannot go back before the convention. In an international convention, it is.
But you can still speak about the truth of what happened.
Yeah, but the report accepted, yes, it is genocide. And the Turkish thesis collapsed during this so-called dialogue. There was a budget $2.5 billion given to American government to force both sides so-called dialogue. And also dialogue collapsed, and one of the speakers of this so-called dialogues meetings, he was a diplomat, also a columnist of Turkish press. He attacked me because he wasn't happy to be published this report in Turkish. The main reason, not the book. The main reason was the report made by New York International Law Institution about the Armenian genocide. Because the public opinion could read this report, and so, okay, look at what the international, and it is very contradictory, because the demand came from that gentleman. He wanted to go that institution, not Armenian side. So it was a very political reason there was. And so they use Article 301. It was a new made...
Article 301 prohibits
defaming
insulting Turkishness, right?
Yes.
And that was reformed in a very minor way Turkishness was changed to the Turkish nation or the Turkish state, but the idea is still there, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is an article that's several times.
For example, there is another collection of book of the oral history of Greek deportation from Anatolia.
Right.
It was accused also because with the same article.
Right.
Or we published another book about Pontiac Greeks. Again, the accusation was insulted Turkishness. It's a very stupid thing. For example, you publish a book about Aborigine, and the Austrian government published immediately a declaration. This is defamation of Australian nation. Because we have a clean history. You cannot make a dirty argument.
We've got plenty of people making that argument.
Yes.
Don't worry about that. But important to know that they don't have
But you can publish,
that prohibits it, and a law
you
that
can
make
express
you,
at least what happened to the Aborigines. You can talk it, you can discuss it.
Yeah.
Some people can use these sentences.
In Turkey, you are thrown in jail
there is difference.
for it. You are thrown in jail for it.
You will go to the jail because of the Aborigines.
Right. This book by George Georgian, I was looking at the English version of it, and the blurbs, the recommendations on it, are from academics at the Cato Institute and various really right-wing institutes in the United States. So it's kind of interesting that this book that comes with the imprimatur of these very conservative, some would say right-wing organizations in the United States is what's landing you in trouble by translating it and publishing it in Turkish.
Yes, also we were convicted because of a report of Human Rights Watch.
Right.
It was about the war crimes of Turkish army during the Kurdish war. It is a neutral report. Also, there was some examples of the Kurdish guerrillas, bad examples. But after we published this report, the Kurdish political organization declared, yes, it is not good, and we are open to interrogate these events. But the Turkish side put us trial, and we were convicted defaming Turkish army because there were examples like Vietnam, how they pushed from the helicopters prisoner of wars. They were alive, they were captured, or how they burned the civilian villages. And we published report of Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch published also a very good report about the genocide during Saddam against the Kurds. And this international institution report could be put in trial only because of one of American officer declare is not good. And they accepted by the court as defaming Turkish army. But real defaming is to do this kind inhuman things. We try to explain themselves. Defaming Turkishness is denial of genocide. If we want to defend Turkish honor, we must apologize. We must also accept the damage. And then we can win our humanity. Also, we must accept what happened during Dirty War. Like it was like Latin America or Indonesia, what they did at the half part of the 90s. Turkey was in danger of a new genocide against the Kurds. And why we publish Armenian genocide? Not only to talk about the historical truth, also because we wanted, as a human rights activists, we wanted to prevent a new genocide. And what is going on now in Middle East? A genocide became a real danger.
You're talking about in northern Iraq.
In northern Iraq, also in Syria, for Christians, for Yazidis, or for Alevis, or different Muslims, because there is a kind of growing Islamofascism in the region. And this is the greatest danger for the region, also for the Turkey, because like boomerang, it will come back to Turkey. Like how United States supported so-called freedom fighters in Afghanistan. And later they came back to 11 September back to New York, to Pentagon, to White House, what they themselves created. And like that period, wrong American policy, unfortunately, Turkish government also gives support that kind of groups. They tolerated their passage to Syria, Iraq. And what will happen? I'm very anxious for the future of Turkey also.
Is that what drives you?
Sorry?
Is that what drives you? Is that what, I mean, this is not an easy life that you've chosen for yourself. Is that what drives you?
Oh, yeah.
You know? I mean, there are other options.
Yes,
you know that,
yes.
right? The other options are, okay, you've brought me another book about the Armenian genocide. Maybe I won't do that right now. Maybe I'll do something else that's less problem. That's not going to bring as many problems. But you don't choose those other options. You choose these difficult things. Are you?
You know, I'm not only.
What is the thing that is driving that for 40 years?
You know, I'm not a professional publisher.
Right.
I'm a bad publisher as business.
Publishing with your heart and not your head.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Economic, no profit. And but because we survive, if it was a business publishing, it impossible to survive. With business mentality, you cannot manage it. But why? Also, I'm a writer, journalist. I can write essays. I like music. I'm also writing music critics, literature critics, instead of these problematic topics. But also, there is something different. I am a human rights activist.
Why? Why? Who wakes up in the morning and decides they're a human rights activist?
Because
what are you trying to fix, Ragip?
Why I am? Because I am the witness. If you are a witness, something wrong happenings, it gives you some responsibility. If I was not a witness, I could close my eyes. My thesis was about the economic crisis theories in economics, and I could save life. But when one of your friends was hanged, or when one of your friends were shooted, assassinated, so there is a responsibility,
and is that
ethical responsibility.
Did this happen with friends of yours? Is that what ignited you?
Sure. So it was impossible for me, a peaceful way to be economist and a good economist, and I was retired now. I'm now 66, and but if you have eyes, if you see something later, if you accept this, you will be a part of this crime. Also, if you know something about Armenian genocide, if you know something about Holocaust against the Jewish people, so you got the responsibility. So if you got the responsibility, you must prevent. So how can you prevent? You can prevent only enlightenment. You can prevent only production of alternative resources, alternative history, and critical of authoritarian official history, ideology. One of the terrible things, ideology, unfortunately. All based, these horrors based on ideologies, nationalism, or radical religious beliefs, or political beliefs. And generally, sometimes we saw intellectuals. For example, our new prime minister, intellectual. And I'm very afraid because he's intellectual. Because, you know, intellectuals always try to give shape to the society in their mind, in their looking. But society is different.
He's got a plan. He'll have a plan.
For example, in Cambodia, the leaders were French educated from Paris, and they tried to give shape to the society, a kind of engineering of the society. We are in danger because this mind in Turkey, engineering of society, to give society religious belief, conservatism, so-called ethic, and then problems begin.
We're going to talk. We're going to return to the Kurdish
Yes.
issues in a minute. But for the moment, I want to stay a little bit with the personal and about what motivates you. I want you to tell me about your wife, because your wife, who died in 2002, prior to that time, she seemed to have a rap sheet longer than yours. The number of times that she was put on trial,
Yes.
and the number of times that she was in prison. I think she was in prison 4 times.
Yes, 4 times she was.
And then died shortly after her last time in prison?
In 96, because of the conviction about Armenian genocide.
Right.
The third one because of Armenian genocide. The first because of the history of Turkish left.
Mm. The two of you started Belge, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes,
Belge
good.
Publishing House in 1977. So this has been a joint effort on your part for all
yes, I cannot
for all those years. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Without Ayşenur, my wife.
Ayşe.
She was like me on the way of academics, but she stopped. She was going to London for PhD, and after military coup, she didn't go because she told, I cannot leave country when my friends were in prison or in danger to be hanged or to be killed. And she went on solidarity actions with political prisoners. And later, and that time also she was director of Finance Institute of Istanbul University. She was there 7 years. But when Turkey became more intolerant also in university, because they begin to shoot also our professors. For example, my PhD professor shot in front of his house. He was one of the best sociologues of Turkey, Cahit or Hamdi Tengel. He was shot by fascist gangs, ultranationalist gangs, because they supposed he's preventing their way at the university.
That was in the 70s, was it?
Yes, 70s.
Yeah.
And then I decided to close the page of academics, and I decided to work as a journalist. My wife was working as a publisher, so she tried to build up her own library. Also, she tried to produce alternative reading lists for researchers. A kind of dream was to create an alternative university by means of publication. So with 36 intellectuals, we founded a newspaper. The title was Democrat, and there was that period de facto civil war between left and right wing, like Latin America, because there was elected a social government now, and that time the conservative party leader built up nationalist front, like France, you know, there's a nationalist front.
Right.
But they built up a government in Turkey in 70s. So it was a kind of civil war. Later, the army took the army, and so the curtain was closed for democracy. Afterward, totally. Turkey is under, as legal system, under this authoritarian controlling system built up by the generals. Now they lost the control, but political Islam got the power. So they are using for their benefit this apparatus of the state, controlling apparatus.
And so this is, continuing on from the military, there's still this authoritarian control, as you say. And you mentioned, the violence that happened back in the 70s. The violence continues, doesn't it? In the 90s, you yourself and you and your wife and your publishing house was the victim of a firebombing.
Yes, firebomb.
Tell us about that.
Yes, just after publishing. First, it is interesting, we published Armenian books on Kurdish question. It was, again, first time.
The first time
for the Turkey in 90, because after the 70s it is impossible to publish books about Kurdish.
Was it actually illegal to even use the word Kurd? Is
and
that true?
It was also illegal to use Kurdistan, Kurd, or to use Kurdish language, to sing Kurdish, or to use Kurdish colors. Three color. If it was if three colors came together,
that was against the law.
And so, for example, a tourist from Suriname came to Turkey, and the police began to beat him, and he couldn't understand because his outfit was so-called Kurdish colors, red, green, and yellow. And he never understand why she was. And there was a serious trial. It was so strange. In 90s, the situation of Turkey, it was crazy. Yeah. And that period, my wife dared to publish books on Kurdish question. But it helped to change the situation. Without struggle, you can not change the system.
Right. And so you were firebombed by whom? Who do you know who did this?
It's bombed by a state gang because we had threats by phone after we published Armenian books. Also, we were neighbor at the same building with a Kurdish newspaper.
Right.
So we were targeted together with the Kurds, and 2 flat was destroyed. All our flat was, and we are lucky because if they were not professional. We are lucky because
had they been good at what they did.
Yeah, if they couldn't manage the timing. The bombing happened when we were and at least 100 people died because it was a beautiful business center with notariat, lawyers, publishing houses, printing houses, and you may imagine 2 flats was destroyed totally. And we were at the publishing house when they were putting their bomb because they rented office next to us, and they were working, and we suppose they are arranging the shelves on the wall, but they were arranging plastic to put in the wall, and very openly they did this. But later, with the state report, there was a scandal about interconnection, ultra-nationalist groups, Turkish police, and special teams because of a traffic accident. And later, the state, top-level state control organization, dependent on the president, made a report, and they accepted the responsibility of that bombing. So we win our trial because we went a trial against the state, against the government. After 17 years, we win.
17 years that took.
Yes, and we could get only $3,000. We lost nearly everything, but they told you couldn't prove. You didn't show us the bills of your machines
or what it all cost.
And there was a fire report. There was nothing. How can we save the bills?
So this justice came, such as it was, came after your wife's death.
Yes.
Now, when your wife died, I also understand that your son, Dennis, who also works with you in the publishing venture,
yes.
He was arrested for the speech he gave at his mother's funeral.
Like me, he was also on the way of academics, and his area was political philosophy, science, politics. And so he was, they asked to give conferences at the legal political party which supporting Kurdish rights also beside human rights, and the majority of the members were Kurds. So we are not Kurds, by the way. And he was arrested because he was a lecturer of the Political Science Academy of that party, People's Peace Party. After he arrested, the academy went on to work with this solidarity of academic world, because there was a huge protest against our arresting, and many academics wanted to give solidarity conferences, and the academy was open, the party was legal, open, but my son stayed at the prison 2.5 years because of only lecturing. And do you know his topic of the master, and he transformed it to a book, the political philosophy of Thomas Hobbes.
Thomas Hobbes.
And you know, it's the base also authoritarian state.
It might have been a little bit
monster. Leviathan.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness. So tell us a little bit. We're going to have time for audience questions, and there are microphones in the audience, I'm reliably informed. But before then, I want you to talk about the most recent charges. They've all been, you yourself a victim of terrorism, of real terrorism. You have been charged under a lot of anti-terror laws.
Yes, first time I am under anti-terror. Before I was a criminal of...
the penal code, right?
Criminal penal code of... prisoner of consciousness.
312, prisoner of conscience, but now, you're under the anti-terror laws.
I'm a terrorist.
You're a terrorist. Well, let's be precise here. So in June 2010, you were acquitted for spreading propaganda. That was the charge, spreading propaganda for the banned Kurdish Workers' Party, PKK, under Article 7/2 of the anti-terror law. And that was for the publication of a book called More Difficult Decisions Than Death. In 2011, you were convicted of spreading propaganda. Again, it's about the publication. It's about to support the Kurdish Workers' Party under that same Article 7/2 of the anti-terror law. And that's from Mehmet Guler's book, The KCK File, The Global State and Kurds Without a State. So again, on the Kurdish question. October 2011, you're arrested with 40 others, and this is part of a 2-year crackdown where over 1,000 have been arrested, including your son Dennis, as you were just telling us. And this is all a crackdown on scholars who focus, again, on the Kurdish issue. March 2012, you were charged with aiding and abetting an illegal organization under anti-terror laws. That's slightly different from the propaganda law. So what's going on there? This isn't about something you published?
It is the reason, no, because of, like my son.
Like your son, this is about the speech.
Same trial.
The same trial.
To talk at the academics.
Right.
It became a crime to help and support terror organization.
Right.
But,
so tell me, what is the problem with the Kurds? Because I read the newspaper this morning, and Australia is actually airdropping ammunition to support Kurds in northern Iraq in their fight against the Islamic State.
Yes.
But of course, this Kurdish issue has been going on for decades in Turkey. What do you think is the key problem here with the authoritarian Turkish state? What are they worried about? Are they worried about
they're very
open, violent rebellion? Are they worried that you're in aid of people who violently want to overthrow Turkey? What is the concern?
There was a general plan to arrest more arresting between the intellectuals, that period. Because inside the state, a group wanted to prevent, because there was an interrogation between Kurdish and Turkish government side. So they wanted to prevent that process. Yeah, it was a process looks like Ireland or South Africa,
right.
a kind of peaceful solution. Find a social. It's good for both sides, for Kurdish people.
And that
also.
peace process is going on right now, isn't
yes,
it?
it's
We're
going
in the middle
on.
Of it. Right.
And then a group at the state, deep state, wanted to prevent that process. So they wanted disconnected intellectuals and human rights supporters from Kurdish issue to make them fear and stop to interest solution of Kurdish question. So the main reason was to give a sign to the intellectuals. And later we learned there was a list to be arrested 1,000 intellectuals. But I'm grateful, International PEN, Amnesty International. So it was very hard for themselves to define me a Kurdish militant, because different circles of the world, also governmental organizations, because of human rights work, they are not popular inside the Turkey. Might be because of the censorship, other things. But for international relations, we are a partly known name. So there was a huge reaction after me and Professor Büşra Ersanlı arrested with me. We became a sign to prevent new authoritarianism, and the campaign was successful. I was released before the trial, and the Professor Ersanlı was released first sittings of the trial. If there was silence in the world and in Turkey also, that period Turkey was a kind of fear of republic of the fear. Everybody was anxious because they began to arrest everybody. So the reaction was also a kind of self-defense of intelligentsia, not only solidarity with me.
Right.
So the process stopped. That part of the state later tried to arrest Turkish CIA chief. Only because of that, to prevent peace process.
Prevent peace process.
Yes, and so Mr. Erdogan was in danger also. But he was responsible because of arrestings. He is the prime minister, and his police arrested us. So when the wave turned himself, he made stop this arresting campaign. It happened like a Hrant murder. He was killed during his power, and he's officially responsible.
Hrant
Dink, Armenian journalist killed Turkish, in 2007.
Yeah.
Because all information they had before the assassination by intelligence service, but they didn't prevent. For example, they prevent assassination against Orhan Pamuk, but they permit Hrant Dink because he was Armenian, because Orhan Pamuk was Turkish. It was the same reason. Orhan Pamuk was attacked because he built only a sentence about Armenian genocide and Kurdish question. And he was a target of all ultranational circles, also the security part of the state.
Right. So you're talking. So I mean, Orhan Pamuk was he was charged under Article 301 for those statements about the Armenian genocide, and I think he made that to an overseas magazine. But at the same time, there is this organization that you're referring to as the deep state, or the ultra-nationalist kind of core of this authoritarian ideology in Turkey that is also conducting violent acts against people like Orhan Pamuk, and
also they
murdered Hrant Dink.
Also they killed the priest, a Catholic priest in Antioch, a Catholic priest in Trabzon.
Right.
There were other assassinations also, wild assassinations.
Right.
And there was a massacre in Malatya. 3 missionaries were killed wildly. And also, it was a part of a program.
I've got a million other questions I want to ask you, but this is a democracy. So we need to open up for questions in the audience. Now, I guess microphones will appear, or there are microphones. There's one over there. There's a woman there, and I think there's one over there. So if you can make your way to the microphones. Obviously, we're running out of time, so let's keep the questions brief and make sure it is a question. We all have statements we'd like to make, but let's make sure it's a question. You, madam.
Öncelikle hoş geldiniz.
Teşekkür ederim.
I think my question is your thoughts around the Alevi problem. Armenian genocide is really a big one, as well as the Kurdish problem. And being originally Turkish, I have really just opened up to the reality of the Turkish history after I left Turkey, and I was devastated to find out it is not in the school history books, and have been completely left ignorant and quite biased as a result of that. I think since I left, Turkey has done some journey, and of course, through your contributions of human activists and journalists who are willing to speak up and question the history, which is fantastic. Now, recently, I've come to understand deeper about the Alevi problem and the history of the Alevi issue with the Sunni background, and I'm finding out that there has been a couple of genocides and massacres to the Alevi groups. The latest one was in 1938 under Atatürk's management before he died. I can't say I'm well researched about this, but I'm hoping that you can actually give some answers. What do you think about Atatürk? Because the more I'm understanding about these things, he has been authoritarian himself and not necessarily a great democrat.
Okay, can we limit it to that? That's a huge question. So we're going to just stop you right there. Can you just give us maybe 1 or 2 thoughts about Atatürk and also perhaps the Alevi genocide that she's talking about?
Yes. Okay. Atatürk is, like many others, a state builder and a part of our history. So I don't think there is a need to discuss so much about he was Democrat, because he was also a part of the 30s, the world of the 30s. When we look at the 30s, Mussolini, Hitler, in Europe, all nationalist governments, in Russia, Soviet government. For that period, Atatürk is not so strange. So, because we must look the events from the window of that period, not from the window of today. It is a reality, a genocide happened to Alevi people when he was near to die. And it was a crime against humanity. And the Alevi society now in fear in Turkey. They feel they are living under a fear of democracy because of the Islamist color of the government and the president. And after what is going on in Syria, the massacres against Alevi, and also massacres in Iraq against Shia people. And do you imagine so-called Turkey is a nationalist country, but in Iraq there are Turkmens, Turkic origin Turkmen, and they are both groups, Shia and Sunni, and there are massacres against Shia and the Turks, and there is not enough reaction in Turkey, unfortunately. So we must pull ourselves back from Shia or Sunni, and we must focus how to prevent the violence based on religious belief. Every day we hear bombing, car bombing in Baghdad from both sides. And so we must denounce this. We must declare openly, if you are a Muslim or Shia or Sunni, as believers, individual believers, they must protest first of them, because like how they make Turkishness with stupid and meaningless by that kind of laws, so they doing the same thing for the Islam belief and the religion. It is one of the old believings, but it's terrible. The violence based on religion, like violence based on nationalism, like Nazi period. So everybody must see there is a growing threat, not only for Middle East, not only for Turkey, but for Europe, all the world, a growing religious-based violence and fascism. Fascism might be find the old moda term, or but phalangism, all this kind. These are very dangerous developments, and we must be very serious how to prevent this. And the most responsible sections are the Muslims. For example, I would like to ask Salman Rushdie. You know, he was under the danger of the violence because of his book.
The fatwa for the satanic verses.
Satanic verses. Yeah. He's better now. But I know how he was, how he had to live underground with the safeguards, like more safeguards than Orhan Pamuk. Orhan Pamuk had also safeguards, not ranting. He's now, and he did very good. He got an award this year, American Pen Award, you know, because of contribution of freedom of expression. But it is very sad for me. He cannot dare to publish satanic verses anymore, because it is a kind of a contract between that circles. Okay, don't kill me. I will not publish the book. So where is the freedom of expression?
Or, and that's not for me.
For example, you can make caricatures about Jesus Christ or other people. So some circles will be nervous. So I believe you must be respectful for the belief of the people. But you can do, but you cannot.
You still need the freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But where is the reaction censoring the caricatures about Muhammad or the Islam? So you are not in the danger of the states, but should states, because Iran, state organized, they gave the fatwa for him, Salman Rushdie. But also you are in danger of the communities.
Yeah.
Intolerance between the communities. This is
a
a danger.
Problem here, is it because
you know about the Buddhist people attack the Muslims.
Yeah.
Buddhists are the most peaceful people, but they became strange also.
It happens to all of them.
Yeah.
We're going to leave that right there.
Thank you very much
for the moment. Thank you, sir. And again, keep it as brief as possible.
Sure. Firstly, thanks very much for your comments. I'd like to say that personally, for me, Turkey is a bit of a beacon of hope and secularity in terms of the Middle East and, I guess, West Asia. So I'm wondering, that may be a bit blurred at times, I suppose, but I'm wondering in terms of journalists and publishers in other autocratic states where punishments for publishing media that speaks out against the state is perhaps even more severe than in Turkey, say, China, for example, or Cuba or Saudi Arabia. Just wondering how you might suggest publishers in those countries would go about promoting freedom of speech and getting further ideas out there.
So are you looking for, are you able to make some comparisons between, the situation of publishing in Turkey and what you're able to do? And would you therefore be able to give advice to somebody who's working in a different political regime, say in China?
Sure, Turkey is a part of the European system after the 50s. So there are limits of preventing. It's not like Iran or China or Cuba.
There are legal instruments that
yes.
a publisher can call on.
We
Turkey.
survive because of that, because we can use these options to survive. And always we were, one leg was at the Turkish court, but our leg was at the Strasbourg Human Rights Court. Yeah. And we win several trials at Strasbourg. And Turkish state had to pay us money for the damage they did, and we use this money in good way to publish more books about Armenian and Kurdish question.
And to pay the legal fees, no
So
doubt.
the Turkish government finance.
Now that's an ingenious publishing business model. Let's quickly go to the next question.
Good afternoon. I'd just firstly like to say, as someone who is of Armenian background, I am Australian, but of Armenian background, to say thank you very much for doing the important work that you're doing, not only in terms of the area of journalism, but historically translating these documents and putting them out there. It's very important to us. Secondly, we hear a lot in the press about the sentiment in Turkey, but what's the sentiment towards freedom of expression with the younger generation? I mean, we're seeing all these revolts in the Arab nations and, not so recently in Iran, but what does the younger generation feel towards this freedom of expression in the newspapers? Is there going to be a change in the mentality, or is it just going to stay the same?
Okay, going to hold off just 1 second. Sir, can we have your question as well? Because this will be the last question, and then we'll try to address both of them.
Sure. I was just wondering how you rated Erdogan's government in relation to previous Turkish governments in relation to freedom of speech, because I know that, or at least treatment of minorities, because I know that they have made some improvements. Is that born of a genuine move towards liberalism, or is it born of a more pan-Islamic view of everyone who is in that region being included? Thanks.
Okay, great. So the first question about young people, we saw with the Gezi Park demonstrations. There also, we didn't discuss at all the internet laws that have come in, that have seen YouTube taken down, Twitter taken down. There are all these sorts of new instruments that the state can use to censor. So can you talk a bit about young people in Turkey and their attitudes?
Yes, it's a very important question, really. Because after 2001, which Turkish government organized a special committee, a coordination committee, struggle with genocide claims. It's a top level as a part of National Security Council. Every country has a National Security Council. For example, in United States, 5 members, one is Obama, and you may imagine they are busy for denial, top-level security. And they organize subcommittees. For example, every governor of Turkey, so there is 80 governor of Turkey, one of the vice governors' responsibility is to organize this committee work in their region. It means to organize seminars or conferences, so-called enlightenment about Armenian genocide, lies. So it is more dangerous than older periods, because before old period, the old generation knew something happened, and many of them knows Armenian genocide is a truth, and also some of them defends it, but accept it. To defend it, it means to accept. But they are giving poison after 2001 to the young generation. This kind publications, conferences. But,
this is the denial
thanks to God,
yeah.
with the death of, after the death of Hrant Dink, this is now a passive committee, not as before. And also, a young generation, you know, the internet age, and are tired to listen the lies of the authoritarianism. So many brilliant young people are more open-minded, because of that they want to prevent internet other ways. Now book is out, old moda, so it is not so dangerous as before. Right. So they don't care so much. Also, they prevent marketing by means of distribution systems.
Right.
So you cannot find enough at the book stands at the big bookshop system.
It's much easier to control the book than it is.
Yes,
yeah.
And also they put denialist books there, sure, big bookshops. You can find all denialist books at the Turkish bookshop systems, like Barnes & Nobles, we have now too. But you cannot find our books, for example. So, survive in 90s were harder for us. But at least we could distribute our books better. Now the system is preventing, because also system is supporting self-censorship. As journalist, as publisher, if you want to win good money, why? Don't write about problematic things. And write nice things about Erdogan.
Right, nice things that are going to sell. Well, speaking of Erdogan, let's go to the second question.
Yes.
How does he rate?
It's a
in terms...
contradictory.
Yeah.
Because of Erdogan is also sure nationalist, but his paradigm is also based on religion, means on belief. Sometimes he feel empathy because of the pressures during last period. Also, he was in prison because of Islamist poet's poem, only to read a poem. He went in prison. He was the mayor of Istanbul.
That was also under Article 301, wasn't it? Huh? I believe it was under Article 301.
No, it was agitation between the people against each other.
Yeah, all right. He brought agitation by reading a poem when he was mayor of Istanbul.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and the first period also he needs liberal image, also help of the liberals against militarism.
Right.
Because he was also under the danger of the military coup. But after he win, after especially the elections of 2011 over 50%, he began to suppose I can do what I want as the master. Yeah. And also like many other politicians, he had the dreams, and he is Islamist. He is dreaming an Islamist world. He is dreaming a cooperation with Islamist countries. Sure, it is not a radical Islam, but he wanted to give support to the Sunni movements in Egypt, in Syria, in Tunisia, Libya. Also, he's supporting, the Hamas. If you look at all these are based on Sunni sect of the Islam. So it was, and he was supposing America will attack to Iran, but America stopped because the reformers win in Iran. God save. And now his policy is bankrupt. He wanted to be up something like to build up a socialist countries union he was
that's kind of disappeared from the radar, hasn't it?
Yes, but now he's going on the way of new authoritarianism and solidarity with them. His good friends is Putin.
You told me backstage, now we're going to have to wrap up on this. They're going to come out and get the cane and take us off stage. And these people have to go as well. But you told me backstage that who was the first person to call and congratulate him when he was elected president?
First Putin, second North Korea, third Belarusia,
Okay, so
and fourth the genocide criminal Sudan president.
All right, so the economy might be picking up, but this is, with friends like those, we can probably make some assumptions about Erdogan. Anyway, I've got to wrap up there. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Ragip Zarakolu, a true hero.